A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. Today we are going to talk with Nikki. We're going to hear her story. She's now divorced after, I think it was 26 or 27 years, and it became final. She's got 3 kids, but she has gone through hell and back, and she's now taking what she has learned through her divorce process and her healing. So she's going to give some advice on healing, and also she's also available for anybody to reach out and if they'd like an extra ear, and some advice as they're going through, as you're going through your divorce process. So here we go, as we welcome Nikki.
Hi, Trina. Thanks for having me here today. I am happy to share my story with your listeners. So I met my husband back in we were both in our 20s. He was in law school. We dated for a while, long distance, and about 3 or 4 years later, we got married. We ended up starting a business together, and that was great. We eventually then got pregnant, and once our children, once one of our kids got into kindergarten, that ended up being really good for our marriage because I really started to feel like we had something really that we were building together, our business, our kids, and our family. And I'm still in that same career today. It's in the legal field, which he's also in. So I guess it was good and bad because as business partners, we were partners in marriage, partners as parents, partners in business. And I don't know, in a lot of ways, that business building was really positive because we became partners in life. But looking back, perhaps I wasn't focused enough, maybe on, the romantic side. We were really partners and focused on that and all the practicality of day-to-day life. And looking back, I realized I always planned as the kids left the nest that, hey, then we're going to have more time to focus on each other and enjoy life. And I guess we just focused forward like that. That was always our plan. And so we bought, in fact, our empty nest house about a year before the craziness started. Although, I'm going to go back about 15 years. 15 years ago, we went to marriage therapy and we did all the things, including renewing our vows. So I felt we were pretty solid. And so when we bought this home, we did some renovations to it. It had room for each child. With the idea was that it's probably bigger than we needed for empty nesters. And we would just go ahead and travel and VRBO it while we're traveling. So as things started going in that direction, and we were at the point to register it on VRBO, I started noticing that he was pulling away. He was a little more distant. And, I've always been more the extrovert. I'm the feeler. He's more the logical person. And I just thought stuff is happening now. There's like a lot that led up to this point in our personal lives, including, unfortunately, in a span of about 8 years, we lost both my parents, um, my father, then my mother, and then he lost his. He lost his father and then his mother. So when we only had one parent left, and that was his mom, um, that was pretty rough. That was a rough time. And then one of our children suffered with anxiety and depression, and we had some really scary times during that. So I guess looking back, there was a lot of stress that finally, getting ready, that was like we went through that and it was behind us. Um, I assumed all that was behind us, and maybe that was why he was being distant. The very last parent to pass was his mother, and it was a painful, long situation. She had dementia, and I really thought uh, the backing away was more of that, but it was just not wanting to do as much with me. I always said stuff like, "Let's go to dinner. Let's invite people over." Um, he would attend, but it just felt like he wasn't really there. Like he was physically there, but not there. So around 2021, um, somebody reached out to me. Um, it ended up being his affair partner's husband. I didn't know at the time this person was his affair partner, but her husband reached out to me, um, and he was questioning their social interactions, and he was going on and on about how they were going to happy hours together, and he was suspicious about it. But I said, their careers involve this. I don't think there's anything to it, and I don't worry about it. I think my husband's fine and your wife's fine. It's just part of what they do. So that was in December of 2021. And then finally in June of that year, well, actually in June of, I guess it was 2022, I got an anonymous letter about the affair. And this person sent me this letter. Bragg is saying that my husband was having an affair with somebody in the office and that she was bragging about it throughout the office. And, it just caught me off guard. But I'm really grateful to whoever sent that to me. I still don't know who it was, but at that point, there was no more hiding it from him. He immediately said, maybe we should just go take some time apart. And that's kind of where things went, and just they continued to go from there. I had already started doing lots of things. Like I started reading books a little, on midlife crisis. I started with, I did the, I did the Laura Doyle podcast, just trying to understand what I was doing. I found Lori at the Wife Expert, and there were some really great things that I learned in all of that. But once the bomb drop actually happened, and he was, um, uh, it wasn't really a bomb drop, I guess, originally because I was told, from the letter. And I don't know. He kept saying stuff like, maybe I want a different life. And I thought, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then finally, um, he said, out of the blue, yeah, I guess we just need space. But I got him to agree to do a marriage helper weekend. Um, but I don't know. At that time, COVID was just ending. So they had some just online um, things that we could do. And he didn't want to go do it in person. He wanted to wait. And so we did the online via Zoom. I think he was just punching his ticket because we did the marriage helper weekend and it was wonderful. I mean, it really was. But again, it was Zoom. And so that's always hard to connect as much. But every day, the first 2 days, it was, I felt like we were almost laughing because some of the couples seemed so angry and they seemed to hate each other. And we were like best friends. We were like, oh man, we're glad we're not there at that point, right? And then I remember the final night. I had asked him again, is there anybody else you're involved with? because, we can't really move on if I don't know what's really going on. And he denied it that night. He totally denied it. But the next morning, my guess is they must have talked after I went to bed, because the next morning he was a different person. I know he used a quote. I don't know who the quote was from, but he said, um, it's like it's all the notes are there, but you can't hear the music. I think that was the quote. All the notes are there, but you can't hear the music. And it just echoes in my brain a lot. And this was before I received the letter from somebody in his office. So anyway, we wasted, I guess that maybe that was a waste doing that weekend, because looking back, I think he was already in the beginning of a midlife crisis. Things that I've read since then and during, say, don't go to therapy. Do it for yourself. Um, but as a couple, yeah, they're not ready. And it was clear he wasn't ready, because we didn't even have the foundation of honesty. You know, you knock down the house and you rebuild it if you can. And I completely still believe in that. Unfortunately, I was not really given the opportunity to rebuild. So, you know, again, I received that letter. It was sort of typed up like a ransom note. And unfortunately, I received it, and I was in the car with one of my kiddos, and actually turned out, this affair partner had actually gotten close to one of my children, I later found out. And that's a whole different heartbreak, because that child is on the spectrum, and it was really hard when all this came out, for her as well. But anyway, I opened that letter, and I just basically said to myself, "Oh my God, what is happening?" And, you know, m some of my friends speculated that it was the affair partner that sent the letter, but I don't believe so, because, it was really venomous towards both of them, and so I don't think she would have written that about herself. But it did speak about her bragging about the affair, and, he owned the firm, and so unfortunately, he tainted himself in everyone's eyes. And, everybody used to respect him. It was just so unfortunate the way all this happened. For somebody that I'd known for 26 years, it was so sad to see the destruction. My former husband, he was so well respected. But, who turned out to be his affair partner is somebody that we had known on and off in the business world for, I don't know, um, 10 or 15 years. Um, but I didn't see it. I didn't see that that was a possibility. And even when I got that note at the time, um, it just didn't seem right. She has younger children, and I thought this couldn't really be. But um, I ended up going to his firm and calmly discussing it with him. And I can credit Lori at the wife expert with that, because she helped me frame everything for a peaceful attitude. And I was still working with her at the time. And she said, "Go on. You can go in and you can confront them, but just be calm." So, okay, I thought I'd do that. And so I saw both of them, and I asked her to stay away from my family, and I handed him the letter. And I had to drive a couple hours away right then for a business meeting. So I was gone that first night, and we didn't talk. Um, and then the next night when I came home, we did talk. And he said, "Well, the letter's not quite right. The timing, they made it sound like it was over a year, but it wasn't." He claims it wasn't really that. He says, there's just so many levels of who knows what the truth is anymore. But he said, "Well, maybe we should take some time." And at the same time, he had talked me into making an investment in a condo downtown. And looking back, that investment ended up being his escape hatch, I guess. Um, so I started to see signs of depression. So I started Googling that, and, I have a psychology background, and I started thinking, yeah, his attitude and emotions are flat. The only way I can describe it was like, yeah, a flatness to him. Um, and then once I started finding this information on midlife crisis, it just was down a rabbit hole. I did a lot of reading. I started looking at all the different coaching programs, um, because I think sometimes these programs, when they say, well, you could save your marriage with just one of you. Well, I don't know if I believe that. I think it does need two people, and and two people that have to be engaged in it eventually. But you can absolutely change the trajectory of which way it's going, and you can do that by yourself. So when I did the research, I think that's when it all started to click, in the apathy that we had plans. Like, we had bought a home that was going to be our retirement home, grandchildren. And then one day he finally said the words, um, I am just not sure what's going on. And he actually said, well, and he said, maybe it is a midlife crisis because I don't know. I keep asking myself, how am I feeling? So he said that. You know, when I got the letter and we talked, he just said, I know where I made the mistake. I should not have opened up to her about our marriage. So unfortunately, there's layers of things, including the fact that she was having inside information from one of my children. Um, And I remember one of my kids announced it at dinner, like, "Oh, did you guys know that, um, her and her husband are having issues?" And I said, "Oh, that is so sad. They have a little child." And I asked my husband at the time, "Did you know they were having trouble?" And he's like, "No, I don't talk to her about things like that." But you know what? Looking back, I suspect they'd already started everything, unfortunately. And so it's those things, you know? Anyway, affairs happen, I guess. Mm. Things can be worked out and are forgiven, but you have to know where to start. And in the future, you have to know where not to cross those lines. And he did acknowledge that. So I don't know. That was, we're back to June 2022. I guess he eventually moved out. We didn't tell our children at first. In fact, we didn't tell most of our friends. I kind of faked it. We had our annual holiday parties. We went to some football games with other couples that we knew, and it was really hard. But then at the same time, in my mind, I thought, well, we're trying to reconnect. Uh, and then we had our holiday, Christmas. It was gut wrenching and awful because I kept thinking, who leaves this? Who leaves this happy family? We've built all this. And I just thought, uh, I couldn't believe it. I think he was just faking it the whole time, and unfortunately, we did everything the same, just the same normal Christmas, and then it became January, and he said all of a sudden, "You know what? We need to tell the kids before they go back to school." And so we told them, and the daughter that worked at his firm immediately looked at him and said, "Dad, is there someone else?" And he said, "No." And so the kids didn't know anything. They believed, it's just mom and dad are getting separated. And originally we said we are just taking some time and seeing how it feels. But the truth is, he'd already been gone from the house from beginning in October, and now it was January. And every time people would come and visit or something, he'd move back into the house. He'd pretend. And I allowed it because I kept thinking we were working on it somehow, right? We weren't doing therapy, but I don't know. I just thought it was going to make a difference. And I started to lose a lot of weight. I call it the divorce diet. That does work because I was eating, but I think your metabolism it's crazy. So, on top of being separated from someone that I lived with for 20 something years, my kids were all away at school. and I was at this house that we had built together and made every little touch together, but it was just me and my dog, and I worked from home. I did, do some work and social things, um, and at the risk of running into each other, um, but I really became a hermit. In town, I was just a hermit. I was just there, there was no way. I didn't wanna go to things and run into him. But looking back, the whole town knew about me and what was going on, and that's just very painful. They they were going out together in public as colleagues. Um, that was their cover. But so that was really painful. And once he moved out, um, I found out that affair partner from the office, she left her husband, and, she ended up getting divorced first. Um, I think my husband was really in depression, probably pressure, because she'd already made the jump and he hadn't. And again, I'm happy I found out, but clearly he was trying to not have me find out. So I think there was probably a little part of him that thought, I can do this, which was obviously illogical. Pick somebody at your work, and that I even knew. I'd been to her house and she'd been to mine. But again, he's a very rational person, and that's where the irrational parts just start to show up. And then throughout the separation time, all the boxes, I forgot to mention he had gotten a Corvette. He souped it up. It was loud. And actually, it was blue, but he traded it in for a red one after we um, separated. So I guess the cliche. And he absolutely, became a fitness fanatic. He was always, like most people are going through, they're getting in the really getting in shape phase. Um, but overall, I mean, he was throughout the course of our lives, he was always very fit and healthy. But he did go to a little bit of an extreme. So, um, I guess we were starting to check some of those unfortunate standard boxes of MLC. And he moves out. I guess, after he moved out, she eventually moved in with him. So that all occurred, you know, I guess it was 2023, and I filed for divorce. Um, to divorce, it took a long time. Um, I really can't believe he's still with her. They have so little in common. I think he doesn't wanna really be a stepdad to 3, young children. But I don't know, having adult children and looking forward to grandkids and all those next phases, those were things we were looking forward to, and now she has young kids. I mean, the youngest, is just barely kindergarten. Anyway, so he's living at that condo, and they started going really public. Um, I was working throughout all this, thankfully, so I was able to hire my own attorneys, and I got really great representation. It ended up being a really complex divorce, obviously, because we're both in the legal field, but we had no choice, and, I told the kids, "I don't want you guys to see this version of marriage anymore." Meanwhile, he was telling the kids, Um, "Your mom is my life partner. I will never get remarried." That was his story. To my children, I'll never get remarried. I don't see a reason why we'll ever divorce because financially, it'll only hurt the 3 of you. But then to me, that was gross and heartbreaking. I just couldn't deal with that anymore, and I wanted to start my life. I was worried about combined finances. I had started, that I just had to start my own life free of this, and, uh, I w I eventually started dabbling with online dating, but I wanted to be able to do all that with a good conscience, you know? And so I filed and I told him, and he was very disappointed that I had gotten an attorney. But I will advise anybody who ever goes through this at least to seek some kind of counsel, because especially going through this at midlife, the person that you knew, they're just very different, especially in a midlife crisis. And I think there's a phrase, you know, the person you divorce is not the person you marry. And it's just unfortunate, but true. So that was a very hard year going through all that. Um, I was getting individual therapy, and, you know, I still am, and he still doesn't understand the impact it's had on them. And the more I read, the more I realize it's trauma for everyone. But adult children, it's very different because they question everything because we were partners. They didn't see us fighting. He had um, written them this beautiful book about thoughts and like wisdom from him one Christmas. He gave them each a copy of this book, and I had forgotten about it. But our oldest, when we announced that we were separating, they pulled out the book, they pulled the page about finding your best friend and how he had written, I got lucky because I found my best friend when I was in my 20s. And then she printed out all these pictures of the two of us because, you know, in her head, she was trying to show him, look, this is what I saw as your daughter. She wrote a beautiful 5-page letter to him about what she saw as love. And it's very hard even. She's pretty open with me, but it's hard for me to talk about it with her because I'm still confused about it. It took him a long time to respond to that letter. Um, and when he did respond, he didn't respond to just her. He responded to all of us. Um, and he tried to justify it all. But you know, there's no justifying these things. He kept saying to them, well, you guys are adults. You know, you have your own lives. It's time for us to build our lives. He said he'd met a wonderful partner and he was finally happy. But they're still together. I don't even know if they live together or not. They do. I think they do still work together. The kids are flabbergasted and heartbroken about that. It's just, you know, the kids look at their parents as a role model for a relationship, good or bad, right? And now I think there's this question of, you know, how am I going to feel safe when I get into a marriage type relationship? You know, it's hard for me to even call myself divorced now. I never thought I just never saw myself divorced. But I focus on myself. I mean, that consistent message of self-care and focusing on yourself, that is a gift that we all need to give ourselves no matter what, whether we save our marriages or not, because we do lose, especially as women, you know, you lose yourself, right? um, you put your kids first, which is beautiful, but sometimes we forget about ourselves. And so that really helped me. Just those little things, you know, gratitude, walking in the morning and listening to podcasts, and even having the extra time to educate myself and trying out new things. I got into pickleball, all those things. And I wasn't doing it to be this, you know, woman that he's going to want back or any of that. I was doing it because I needed to feel good again about myself. I needed to feel proud of myself. Uh, Even though I work from home, I have a lot of video calls. So even at the worst of this crisis, I had to still get up every day. I had to put on makeup. I had to do all that. And what I always say is, you know, you can have your time, right? Have your sad days. We all do. Have your sad hours, whatever it is, but then focus on one or two things that bring you joy. And at first, even getting off the couch is hard. Okay, fine. Even petting your cat or your dog on your lap. But, you know, enjoy a funny TV show. I started changing when I would fall asleep off into the TV. I was watching things like, you know, serious stuff, CSI or Dateline. And I thought, I don't know, I don't want that in my brain anymore. So I started rewatching Seinfeld or Friends or something that made me laugh, that was low stress. And then, and then I would get very caught up in it all. I would give myself, I didn't talk about it to everyone, but I had my one or two ride or die people that would listen to all the drama. But you have to be careful you don't do that too much. I had a therapist for a lot of that. And then just slowly start your self care items. Keep doing it, keep doing it. I think it was Laura Doyle that said something like 9 a day or something. It sounded absolutely crazy to me, 9 things every day just for myself. Um, I think it was 9 or 12 self-care items a day. Like at first, I thought the word self-care just meant, getting a massage, but it's not. It means appreciation of moments. So then I started realizing, okay, so my coffee in the morning, that's my peaceful moment. There's no sound. I just sit there. I enjoy my coffee. I look out the window. It's just nice, right? So I started like that. And when you start acknowledging those moments again, it recenters you. And all of a sudden, it's 9 things. And yeah, getting your hair done or getting your nails done or whatever it is that matters overall to you, feeling good, whatever those little things are. It's really acknowledging that you are giving yourself a moment of peace and joy and really acknowledging it. And I did start keeping a gratitude journal. I am religious, and so I turned a lot to God when I finally realized I'm a control freak. And I kept thinking, I could will my way into this being different. And then when I really started just realizing, or what I really started realizing is this is out of my control. And even if you're not religious, I mean, it's still there. There's another human going through this, right? And so I started also thinking of my thoughts as energy. And the more I would obsess over him, the more I thought that I'm actually repelling him, the more I was doing that. Because if your thoughts are energy, this was happening probably. And so then I just started. You know, I tried everything because I didn't want it. I wanted to feel better and I wanted to show my kids a resilient mom in the end. So yeah, I became focusing on gratitude and self-care. Um, my son doesn't really talk much about things. He's not really so communicative. Um, both of the girls are anyway. One was already in therapy, and then the other started therapy. So they know I'm available to talk anytime, and I will tell them as much as I can. And actually, he hasn't pushed his affair partner on them until this year. He's trying to be a bit more. I think he was trying a little more to push her on them. But, I'm just grateful that because my children were not interested for the longest time, and I don't know where they're gonna land, and I don't really have any concern about it anymore. Um, and just like now I'm starting to date, I want them to know, that, their mom's doing better, but I'm not pushing anything. It's there. And, going through this, it's an absolute grief mourning period. And I keep having to remind myself, even all the way up until the final divorce day, that I got the letter. I still didn't believe it. I mean, we had 2 days of mediation, and I mean, a little bit back to the divorce. But I have found a calling in my life now after all this. My way of, I think, dealing with this is it's even though it's very complicated and it was unfortunately really public because we knew a lot of people in the industry and our community. But I have learned a lot in the process. I also learned that you can't use your divorce attorney as a therapist, and you can't use your therapist as an attorney because that's not their expertise. So, I have evolved. I was already taking life coaching classes, and so I was introduced now to 3 more women that are at various stages of their divorce. And I think, you know, my second act might be to help people find their second chapter with or without their husbands. Um, but if there's, especially in the middle of divorce, there's just a lot of things where I can help people focus and say, hey, this should be your priority right now. You should really talk to your attorney about this. That sounds like something that should be addressed, or this one sounds more emotional. Maybe you should talk to your therapist. It's just evolving. And actually, the firm I worked for just referred some people to me. I've realized it's the middle area, especially with the male or female. When you had a life planned, you feel like you feel a bit like everything's now taken from you. In my case, even my last name, I don't even know if I'm going to go back to my maiden name still. It all felt like everything was taken away from me. And I want to help people during that time. I want to help them. Our plan was we were going to enjoy retirement together. And now over the last year, I've been a puddle on the floor. I need to pick myself up. But again, that's part of the whole game. I mean, I have clients that are being questioned because they're not working. I was being questioned because I was working. You've got to step back and be as business minded as possible because it does cost so much money. I feel like this path has been opened up to me, and I'm going to turn these lemons into great lemonade because I am proud of where I've come. And I can always empathize with people because I mean, we could talk another hour about all the little details of my story, but it's just unbelievable. Until you go through it, um, you just don't know it. So I do feel proud that I can hopefully help some people walk the path and, come out the shining self that they are, that they all are. So I guess for now, I'm second act coach. Um, and if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can. They can reach out to you directly and you can send them to me. I'll be happy to help them go through, answer any divorce questions or help them out through this whole midlife crisis. Because it's all about becoming a better you and getting yourself back because that's what's so important. You do lose your identity. Um, but it's at the same time, it's an opportunity to become a better you and to follow some new dreams and all. So thank you so much, Trina. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners today. And thanks so much.
All right, guys. So if you would like to talk to Nikki and get some advice, just sort of like have an extra friend as you're going through this process, please reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com and I will provide your information directly to Nikki and she can reach out to you. Like she said, she's, happy to help others go through it. And she really wants to, help you get through it and become a better you, to truly, start that second act, which you can do now. So, all right. Thanks again for joining us today. And do reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com and I'll connect you to Nikki. Thanks so much. Hey, some resources that are available for you guys are thewifeexpert.com. That's Lori McDermott over there at thewifeexpert.com. She also has a new app out. There's tons of videos that can give you all kinds of information on no matter where you are on your MLC journey or trying to reconcile with your spouse. So check out thewifeexpert.com. And if you're not sure if your spouse or yourself is in maybe approaching or in a midlife crisis, be sure to check out Kenda Root's quiz at midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. Again, that's a midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. That's a quick little 2-minute quiz. It's free. So check that out as well. We have a ton of resources out there for you guys. So check them out. Thanks. You guys, forward moving spouses, you are not alone. Left behind spouses, you are not alone. Those in crisis, you are certainly not alone. This is just crazy how epidemic this has become. I have a waiting list now of people from around the world that I'm trying to get to. And if you've been through a midlife crisis or been impacted by someone else's and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. Hang in there, you guys. I will get to all of you. Please reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com and visit us on Facebook and Instagram, MLC Bombdrop. And just remember, your voice matters. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel seen, it could help someone else feel heard, and it will help somebody else feel understood. You are not alone, no matter where you are in your journey. If the bomb was just dropped, the earthquake just happened, if you are 7 or 8 years in and you're coming out of starting to wake up and awaken to this, um, you are not alone. It's sad that this is epidemic, but we're here to provide support. So until next time, take care and live authentically each and every day. Thanks again, you guys.